Have you ever changed a variable inside a Python function and then outside the function, nothing changed at all? If you ever thought, why is my variable not updating? This video is for you. Because this is where local versus global variables confuse almost every beginner. Now let me show you a confusing example. Now look, x is equal to 10, define change, x is equal to 5, blah, blah, blah. Now you might expect this code to print 5 because that's what most beginners expect. But instead, once we run the code, it ends up printing 10. But why does it end up printing 10? We updated the axis variable value to 5, right? So it should have printed 5, no? Well, that's where local versus global variables come in, like the difference. So now, inside this function, Python creates a new variable called x here. So even though it has the same name, it's not the same variable as the one outside. Now variables inside functions, they are local by default. Now let me show you another example. Let me just remove this code real quick. Define test of y is equal to 3 and then print y. All right. Then we'll write test and then print y. Now, all right, guys. So why it only exists inside the function? Once the function finishes running, the y it disappears. So basically, local variables they live only inside the function. Now let me explain to you what's a global variable. Now let's go back to our original example of the x is equal to 10. Now this x here, it's outside of the function. It's actually a global variable. It exists outside any function. Now global variables can be read inside functions, but not changed by default. Now let me show you another example. X is equal to 10. Let's just remove this piece of code. Define show. Oops, sorry. Define show and then colon print x and then show. All right, let me just remove this code real quick. Now this, it actually works because Python can read a global variable. Now let me run this code, and as you can see, it ends up printing 10, just like how we initialize the variable x with the value 10. So yeah, it ends up working because Python can read a global variable. Now why, let me tell you guys why changing globals doesn't work. Now, let me show you another example. So x is equal to 10, then define change x is equal to 5. All right. Now here, when you assign a value inside a function, Python assumes it's local, unless you tell it otherwise. Now, now assignment creates a local variable. Now, the global keyword in Python. Yes, there's a keyword in Python called global. Now let me show you. Yeah. So simple example of the global keyword. So x is equal to 10. Then define change global x. Define change global x. Wait a minute. Global x. Global x. And then I'll write x is equal to 5. Then change. Then print x. Now here, let's run the code. And as you can see, it ends up printing 5. Now here, what happens is that, but like, this doesn't mean you should always use global, right? Because using global, it can make code harder to understand and debug. So basically what happened here is that we are specifically calling this x variable to change its value to 5. So that's why when we run the code this time, it ends up printing 5. But before we were just uh, printing like a local variable. So yeah. Now here's a better approach for that. So define change. So let me just modify the code real quick. So define change x, then return 5, then x is equal to change x. All right. Then print x. Boom. Done. Now here, instead of changing variables globally, it's usually better to return values from functions. Now let's connect it back to what we learned before. We learned the return function, so this ties directly into what we learned about the return function. Now let me give you a quick recap. Now local variables, they live inside functions. Global variables live outside. Assignment inside a function creates a local variable, and returning values is usually the cleanest solution. Now, if local versus global variables ever confused you, that's completely normal. Once you understand scope, a lot of Python suddenly makes more sense. Now, if this video helped you guys, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'm breaking Python down step by step. And yeah, guys, have a nice day. Bye.